law went into effect in Nevada on January 1st, making several changes to the state's cannabis laws, including a provision that doubles the state's limit on weed possession. The measure, Senate Bill 277, was passed by Nevada lawmakers this spring before being signed into law by Republican Governor Joe Lombardo on June 14th. Senate Bill 277 makes several significant changes to Nevada's cannabis regulations. In 2001, the state legalized medical marijuana, followed by the legalization of adult-use cannabis with the passage of Question 2, a 2016 ballot measure that legalized recreational marijuana in the state for adults 21 and older. The legislation more than doubles the possession and purchase limits for recreational marijuana in Nevada, raising the cap from 1 ounce of cannabis to 2.5 ounces. The measure also doubles the limits for cannabis concentrates from 1/8 of an ounce to 1/4 ounce. Cannabis use around the world continues to eclipse other drugs and is increasing. Opioids, meanwhile, continue to cause the most harm. Those are just some of the takeaways from the United Nations Annual World Drug Report for 2023. Drug use continues to be high worldwide. In 2021, 1 in every 17 people aged 15 to 64 in the world had used a drug in the past 12 months. The estimated number of users grew from 240 million in 2011 to 296 million in 2021, 5.8% of the global population aged 15 to 64. This is a 23% increase, partly due to population growth, the report's executive summary said. According to the report, cannabis continues to be the most used drug, with an estimated 219 million users, 4.3% of the global adult population in 2021. That number is also trending upward, perhaps a byproduct of legalization in the United States and elsewhere. But the report also showed a gender divide when it comes to pot use. The Ultimate Fighting Championship announced the details of its new anti-doping policy, which took effect for all Ultimate Fighting Championship athletes beginning December 31, 2023, and with it comes a progressive stance on cannabis, reflecting a larger trend of reviewing cannabis policy and bans in sports. The Ultimate Fighting Championship announced that it will remove cannabis from its banned substances list, mirroring a larger shift in the world of sports and cannabis use. The ruling comes after the Ultimate Fighting Championship's 2021 decision that cannabis would no longer be penalized for testing positive for THC. The policy deemed that positive tests for carboxy-THC, a THC metabolite, would no longer be considered a violation unless additional evidence exists that an athlete used it intentionally for performance-enhancing purposes. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine last week called on state lawmakers to pass legislation to ban hemp products with psychotropic cannabinoids such as delta-8-THC, saying that the intoxicating products pose a risk to children. The legislature reconvenes this month, with lawmakers already planning to consider new legislation to regulate recreational marijuana, which was legalized by the state's voters in November. The House of Representatives is expected to return to the Ohio State House on Wednesday, 2 weeks earlier than planned. The Senate will also return to session later this month, with cannabis regulation one of the top priorities for the state's lawmakers. Ohio voters legalized recreational marijuana with the passage of Question 2 in the 2023 off-year election. The initiative legalizes cannabis for use by adults and sets the stage for regulated sales of recreational marijuana. The governor emphasized that state lawmakers should move quickly on regulating hemp cannabinoids in the interest of protecting children in Ohio. In 2022 and the first half of 2023, Canada went through a whopping 611.7 million grams. Yeah, that's 1.3 million pounds of cannabis dried bud, but not in a fun way. All of the marijuana in question was tossed out by licensed producers as the result of a disparity between how much is grown and how much people use. They chucked out nearly 44% more than the 425.3 million grams destroyed last year. According to Health Canada, the reported figures actually only account for the weight of destroyed unpackaged cannabis. This indicates that the total volume of cannabis waste in Canada, including products that had already been packaged, could be much higher, perhaps well exceeding 2 billion grams. Maine's regulated adult-use cannabis industry generated more than $200 million in sales last year, an increase of 36% over 2022, according to information from the State Office of Cannabis Policy. But cannabis business owners who feel that Maine's cannabis market is becoming oversaturated say that the numbers obscure the challenges licensed operators will face in the not-too-distant future. Maine's licensed recreational marijuana retailers rang up 3.7 million transactions in 2022, raking in about $217 million in the process, according to information released by state regulators on Monday. The yearly total represents a 36% increase over the $159 million in sales recorded in 2022. Thailand leaders believe the country's move to decriminalize led to a surge of cannabis shops and unintended recreational use, and are backpedaling the law, clarifying several changes. A draft bill to ban recreational use of potent cannabis products was published online on January 9th. Under the bill proposal, anyone who smokes cannabis for recreational purposes will face a fine of up to 60,000 baht, about $1,709.53. Those selling cannabis or its extracts for recreational purposes face up to 1 year in jail or 100,000 baht, about $2,849.21 in fines, or both. Under the proposed new rules, advertising or marketing campaigns for cannabis flower, extracts, and any paraphernalia used to smoke will be prohibited. Driving while high on cannabis would be punishable with a fine of up to 20,000 baht, $569.83, or 1 year in jail. The government will also tighten licensing rules for cannabis planting, sales, exports, and imports. The changes are meant to rectify what lawmakers couldn't foresee earlier. After a major media outlet sounded the alarm about Elon Musk's suspected psychedelic use, officials at the National Aeronautics and Space Administration were called in, but quickly cleared the billionaire's company of wrongdoing. This is just the latest round of NASA's safety reviews of SpaceX after a series of pot and psychedelic-related stunts by Musk. Thanks to a January 6th explosive snitchy report in the Wall Street Journal about Elon Musk's alleged rap sheet of drug use, including ketamine, LSD, cocaine, MDMA, and shrooms, NASA was forced to investigate. The Wall Street Journal raised concern about Musk's mental health issues in its report, supposedly linking it to psychedelic drug use in the workplace. Musk slammed the Wall Street Journal on X, tweeting, "After that one puff with Rogan, I agreed, at NASA's request, to do 3 years of random drug testing. Not even trace quantities were found of any drugs or alcohol." Tens of thousands of people are wrongfully arrested for crimes based on a false positive result from a field drug test each year, according to a recent study by researchers at the University of Pennsylvania. The research, which analyzed data available from public agencies across the country, found that the use of presumptive field tests in drug arrests is likely the largest known factor contributing to wrongful arrests and convictions in the United States. The research was conducted by the University of Pennsylvania Penn Carey Law School's Quattroni Center for the Fair Administration of Justice, a national research and policy center created to foster structural improvements to the U.S. criminal legal system. The study analyzed survey data and national estimates of drug arrests to determine the impact of field drug tests on wrongful arrests, as well as their impact on subsequent prosecutions and criminal convictions. The study found that approximately 773,000 of the more than 1.5 field drug tests conducted in the United States each year are performed with color-based presumptive tests, despite known reliability issues, including false positive results that incorrectly indicate the presence of controlled substances. Although the exact error rate for the tests has not been determined, the data suggests that about 30,000 people who do not possess drugs are falsely implicated by the tests each year. In a historic move Friday, officials from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration said in documents that they support reclassifying cannabis as a Schedule III substance. This would make medical cannabis, and the research supporting it, legal at the federal level, but still heavily regulated, like hormone replacement therapy or ketamine. The 252-page document recommended to the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration that cannabis should be reclassified from a Schedule I to Schedule III substance under the Controlled Substances Act. The documents start with a letter to DEA Administrator Ann Milgram, which reads that marijuana meets the findings for control in Schedule III. It's no secret that cannabis can work as an alternative to other long-standing medicinal options as it pertains to curbing and treating pain and related symptoms. A number of studies have already confirmed the efficacy of cannabis and its compounds as it relates to pain management, though a new study suggests that patients believe it may be even more effective than conventional treatments. A recent survey of German patients published in the journal Frontiers in Medicine explored experiences with cannabis products, with more than 200 anonymous participant perspectives. As with many previous studies, patients largely reported reductions in their daily pain after starting cannabis therapy, along with other benefits. Notably, they reported greater satisfaction with cannabis, calling it more effective than their previous treatments. New York State cannabis regulators are set to vote on proposed rules to govern home marijuana cultivation. If the draft regulations are approved, New Yorkers will be permitted to grow up to 12 cannabis plants at home, subject to some conditions and limitations. The New York Cannabis Control Board was initially scheduled to vote on adopting the proposed home weed cultivation rules at a meeting scheduled for Wednesday, January 25th. However, the board postponed the meeting earlier this week and will instead take up the matter at a meeting next month. Once the board gives its approval, the draft language will undergo a 60-day public comment period before they are finalized. Long Beach, California is on track to establish an ordinance that will give cannabis retailers a minor tax break and reward the ones in good standing on their payments with a bigger tax break, cutting their local tax in half. At a January 23rd meeting, Long Beach City Council members voted to request an ordinance be drafted to lower rates for businesses that meet hiring and compensation markers and are up to date with their current tax payments. City leadership has been aware about the significant tax burden impacting cannabis businesses across California. Not only in Long Beach, but California's entire cannabis supply chain faces a chronic debt problem, and the SF Gate called it an extinction event last year. In one move, state law recently shifted the burden of excise taxes from distributors to retailers. Over a dozen cities and counties in the state cut taxes to assist retailers with this dilemma. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand wants to send the Biden administration a message: end prohibition of cannabis once and for all, by fully descheduling it rather than simply rescheduling it to a slightly less restrictive category. The time is right for real change. On Sunday, the senator called for Attorney General Merrick Garland and the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration to act to deschedule cannabis at a press conference in Harlem, New York. Cannabis is currently classified as a Schedule I controlled substance, the most restrictive category and the same as heroin, with no currently accepted medical use.